Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Bobble Pod. Can't believe we're already on episode 5. We hope you've all been enjoying the content so far. Today's episode is all about creating an effective digital marketing strategy for your businesses. We've got a lot we want to discover today and help you with, getting and understanding why you need a strategy and taking through the whole process of creating a strategy for your businesses. So just to start off, we're going to introduce everyone. So I'm Manny, the CEO of Bobble Digital.
Hi everyone, I'm Claire, CEO of Trio Media.
Hi guys, I'm Anushna Kanyan, co-founder and CEO of Burnwy.
We've got a really insightful podcast to share with you all today. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't also believe that we're on episode 5, so it's great to have listeners all around the world. We've got a lot that we want to discuss today and provide some insights where we are right now in terms of the news here in the UK, in terms of what's happening on a global level as well. A lot of businesses in 2021 are focusing on recovery, but in order to recover, you need to have an effective digital marketing strategy in place. So, with that being said, let's get straight into it. So, why is it important to have a strategy in place? I'm going to kick things off. I'm going to talk about why it's important to have a strategy in place. The first thing is it gives you direction and a focus to work towards. The businesses that we're working with, the first thing we do is focus on strategy. And strategy isn't just like where we are, it's looking at where is the business right now, what are the pain points within that business in terms of what are they struggling on, what are they doing really well at, and then focusing on, right, where is that business hoping to be in the next 3 to 6 months. Before the pandemic, in terms of 2019, we used to always work on a longer term strategy. But now I would say that we're telling businesses focus on the short term because the economic environment and the global pandemic environment is ever changing, considering that, here in the UK alone, we're in our third lockdown, which isn't going to end until June 21st at the earliest, based on the announcements that we had in February. So, with everything going on globally and how different businesses are at different positions, and some trying to recover, some trying to build on growth, and some businesses doing extremely well, I believe that having a short term strategy in place, and if you're going to focus on where to begin, understand where your business is, focus on your business objectives, and try and translate that into measurable, smart marketing objectives for you to achieve.
Yeah, I think the importance there as well, Manny, is knowing how to then budget for what you want to do, because without a strategy, costs can escalate pretty quickly. And I think maybe people who haven't put together a strategy before or haven't started a business before may think, well, actually, if I have to invest potentially in a strategy or in support, that's going to cost me more. I'll give it a go myself and see where I get to. But by doing that, you're not putting in place any tools to measure. So you may spend on one thing, you don't know if that's worked, you then go on and pay for something else without any real metrics in place or performance measurements to know that what you're doing is effective. And also, without that initial piece of the strategy, you're then not really understanding who is this for, who is my audience. And all too often, I mean, I know for all of us, we're dealing with organizations all the time who are approaching us with regards to helping to share their brand message, generate leads, things like that. All too often you see people going, well, I don't really know, I don't know who my audience is. It's for everyone, anyone could buy this or whatever. And businesses don't always realize straight away that that can have a negative effect, and that by having a strategy and honing in on their audience, on the key channels they want to use, is actually going to allow them to be far more cost effective, but not just effective from a financial point of view, but effective operationally as well in terms of where they spend their time and efforts.
Just to add to what you have said, guys, so the same way works video marketing. So you can't just create videos without having it strategically tied with your marketing plans and goals. But what I would suggest, first of all, before creating any video marketing strategy, you need to have your marketing and digital marketing strategy ready, because it needs to be really tied together, really connected together to give you really good results. So basically, today I'm going just give you some insights about video marketing strategy, how to plan it, what's a bit differences with digital marketing strategy, what do you need to know better to create it really in a good way.
Yeah, I think it's good because strategy is really, really important right now. Businesses are struggling. They're struggling in so many different departments within their business that having a clear marketing strategy can actually help support the wider elements and remits within a business. So I'm actually going to put this question out to everyone in terms of, are there specific tools and models that we each use or follow that we can give advice to, our listeners? For example, like here at Bobble, we use a mixture of like the AIDA model. So anyone who doesn't know that, that's attention, interest, desire, action, and following that. But we have our own methodology around peer, which is all about planning, implementing, evaluating, and repeating. How does that work for everyone else?
We find we approach it based on the needs of the client. So similarly, we use popular models like AIDA. Again, we also have frameworks that we've adapted. So for example, a piece we use to help clients with their positioning and messaging is something that we've learned and picked up from through a Gartner specialist, and time that I worked with them a few years ago. So that can be a really useful exercise for people to go through. Who is it for? What does it do? And it could be anything. It could be your service, your product, your business in general. What makes you different? How does it compare to one of your lead competitors? And that type of thing. And usually taking people through that process can really help them start forming an identity for their business, and understanding then, when we work through other models such as AIDA, in terms of how their particular business feeds into it. And I think that's key. And for us all as professionals to take a model, as we are doing, and then show a client how we can actually personalize it to their business. And if anyone's going away and going, what is this, I'm going to look into it more, and looked up the AIDA model. Yes, you're going to start with a general overview of the different stages in the buying funnel that you can take people through, from awareness right through to action. But it's always about looking at, what does that mean to you? And what channels can you use to raise awareness based on your target audience? And then, are those channels going to differ at the interest stage? What do you do differently at that point? And I think this raises a key part of the discussion today, both around defining target audience and the channels that you're going to use as well. But we could probably come back to those. I didn't know if you wanted to add something to that, Anush.
Yeah. Uh, Video marketing strategy actually a bit new to comparing to digital marketing strategy because it came to market with video marketing. So basically, of course, we can also concentrate on some popular already methods of creating video marketing strategy. And in the market, let me say that video marketers creating it in a really totally different ways, but the idea and end result, let me say, is the same. So basically, for us to make process easier for the clients and for those who are just starting, I make it simple, just answering to several questions. So it can lead to understanding your goal, your target audience, understanding which type of videos to use, where to distribute at the end your videos, and finally, of course, optimizing it and making understanding the data and analytics of it. So as you said, Claire, we are going to deeply discuss all this together during this podcast. So this is all about, this is the way that we usually create a video marketing strategy.
I think I was going to say a key thing then is taking it from, well, we kind of know what's important and why strategy is important right now for businesses. It's going to give them a clear direction to kind of grow online. There's a lot of businesses out there that before the global pandemic and the economical impact everyone was feeling was in terms of weren't really already online. So they've had to adapt their strategies, they've had to adapt their business models in some way. But I think what kind of process, helping our audiences and listeners understand what kind of process they need to follow. everything from understanding the audience, budget, their website physical presence, creative such as video, understanding where the competitors positioning. So I think it'd be good for us to kind of quickly help our audiences understand that and go through that in terms of the process of going through the different elements they should consider to create an effective strategy. And I think let's start off with audience. I think the first thing I would highlight is understanding your customers is the most important element. It's as you alluded, Claire, that it comes down to don't just think, oh, our customers are everyone. You have a certain amount of customers, and if you're an e-commerce or an online retailer, you just need to look at who's purchasing. You need to be breaking down those demographics. If you have a WooCommerce site or you're on Shopify or Squarespace, you should be looking at your website data and understanding the demographics of the people that are converting. If you're linking in your Google Analytics, it's giving you a breakdown of who's visiting your website by age, gender, location. So this starts helping you narrow down your audience in terms of, do most of my audience come from, the south of the UK? Do they come from Europe or Germany? Where internationally are my customers coming from predominantly, and what is the percentage of those customers in that area? If you're at a global scale, then you need to be breaking it down by specific region and continent. If you're at a country scale, you need to be breaking it down by county or specific areas within the country. If you're just a local business, then you need, such as let's say you're in Yorkshire, as we are, then you might want to split it by North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, East Yorkshire, and break it down. You could even break it down to city areas if you're just in the West Yorkshire county, such as Leeds, Bradford, or York, Sheffield, etc. So it really comes down to, understanding the data that comes from your website, the data that comes from your Google Analytics, but then there's also that data that comes from your in-platform activity from Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, whatever digital social channels, YouTube for video that you're looking at.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I'd also suggest we need to take a step back, because all those channels are suggesting that someone, is already in those places. Whereas if someone's listening to this and they're looking to create a digital marketing strategy because they're not selling online yet and they don't have an ad strategy and they don't have analytics, people then may ask, where do I start? And so it really comes down to, starting to build a profile of the type of people that may buy your services. So I'll use our own company as an example. So Trio Media, we target small to medium businesses. We know we're not working with the huge brands, so we're not ever going to try to say, yeah, it's for everyone. We found our niche. We work with small to medium businesses. Typically, we have hotspots. We've got 5 sectors that we've identified work really well for us based on past experience in the business in terms of knowledge in the team, and also where we fit well into, and then the characteristics of those people. What is it that they're looking for? What are their key concerns? And I had a client, it's very rare, provide us with an amazing document yesterday that more people should produce, where they had 5 different profiles. Like, client A is going to be this age, this gender, these are their concerns, this is the type of job they have, this is the type of car they might drive. It's a car related business, so that's why that was important. But really start to look into what are their concerns. Is it more likely to be a female or a male, or may you have a profile for each? Is it a younger age group, an older age group? You need to take into consideration how much your product or service is, in terms of then how much disposable income you could expect someone to have. And then with certain levels of disposable income, you can then start drawing other characteristics as well, in terms of the type of things they may be interested in, that then allow you to get, really targeted and focused. So, for example, if a product or service is aimed at kind of affluent middle-aged men, you then may be able to draw some assumptions that they would have interests in golf, in nice cars, and in things like that. So when you're looking at other strategies or things to promote within it, you already then know, I know what interests my audience, and therefore I will play to that, and I will appeal towards them. So really thinking about what those characteristics are, and let's not forget that this could be B2B or B2C, and this exercise is still really relevant. I explained about for Trio, we are B2B, so we're looking at the characteristics of the businesses, whereas if you're B2C, you're looking at the characteristics of that actual end user. And once you start drawing that up, that can then feed into all these other channels in terms of, okay, if my audience is of a certain age, are they on Instagram or TikTok? No, but are they on Facebook and LinkedIn? Yes. So I think we'll come back to that again, in terms of next up with the channels and channel selection from defining your audience. But yeah, that key piece. There's so many things. If you sat down, you could go, right, this is who they are. And I encourage businesses to say, right, customer A is Claire, and she is 31, and she's a business owner, and she's interested in the environment and loves animals and whatever it is. Obviously I'm describing myself there, but you can actually create these personas for people and say, right, persona A is this, persona B is this, and you then can start being really specific. And if you can master this as a business, your marketing will be so on point, because feeding into things like video, if it's a real life video, and Anush, you'll be able to explain more about this, coming down to the models and the actors that are in it, you need to represent people that represent your target audience. So, if your audience is middle-aged, elderly, it's going to be tone deaf to have teenagers as the characters in your video or in any of your other marketing. So understanding this really well will totally frame the rest of your marketing.
Very good. So when it comes to video, we need to answer to really interesting question. It's for whom you are making your videos. Actually, this question is giving you really big understanding of for whom you need to create this video. That means if you don't know whom you are trying to reach with your video, all marketing activities will be useless. So, who is the particular person that will get most benefit from your product or service? Or for video, you can also say like you need to also concentrate on the psychology of your ideal customer, because you need to understand what's going through their heads to create the video that will actually make them to do any actions. So what need drives them to buy your product? What is the pain or emotion that they are feeling that leads them to buy from you? Where are they best, if that matters for you? Or what platform they use? What's the best time to engage with them? All these questions actually giving you the understanding of which type of video to create, how long this video could be, and all the information to create the exact thing that will make your ideal customer to take actions after watching your video and engaging with it. That's maybe just to add for what you said, because you truly gave all understanding of what's his target audience. I just wanted to add it from for the video.
Yeah. So I'm curious, because I think that's great, asking those questions to both of you. How often do you find your clients already know this stuff and already have the answer, or do you really have to help tease it out of them?
Usually they know the answer, but not very strictly, or say not the strict answer of it. Because sometimes they said, okay, it's just businesses in tech industry. It's 31 years old, as you said, like girls or women. But sometimes to understand the real target audience, you need to go more deep in details to understand like who will get the benefit of your products. Maybe you want to target, like let's say 30 years old women, but maybe the ideal person who can get real benefit from it could be just men like 40 years old. So basically in this place you need to put you in the place of the customer and understand who you could be to get benefit from your products. So I may say not all, like maybe 80% of the clients don't exactly know who is the target audience. And you need to give them some direction so they can pick up the right person, right audience for before doing any actions.
Yeah. And what about you, Manny? Do you find that people tend to know, or you have to really help them out in understanding it?
Yeah, it's you have to some. It's like sometimes trying to get blood out of a stone with clients, to put it bluntly. I think when you have that exercise with clients, it's great when some clients already know who their audiences are, especially when they're in niche markets. It kind of really helps. So from my perspective, that's great. But when you do get a number of clients that are like, well, we don't really understand it, and we have to go through that process of like, looking at their messaging, looking at, well, how are they kind of targeting right now, understanding, who's converted, etc. It's even more difficult with startups, and we do work with a number of startups in terms of helping them identify and profile ideal customers. So it's creating particular segments to test and trial. So for instance, you would start with exercise of building, I'd say 3 to 4 profiles of who these are by age, gender, what do they do? Are they consumer focused? Are they the end user, or are they business focused? So at the first point, especially if you start up, it is a little bit of guesswork and understanding it, and then it's trying to break that down further. We're quite fortunate at Bobble. We obviously invest into platforms like Global Web Index, so we can start taking those profile demographics and breakdowns and build them into our Global Web Index platform. And then we can start really understanding, are they spending time on social media? Are they spending time on, mobile? Are they spending time on TV? We can understand their questions and, responses they've given to certain tasks in terms of how are they likely to buy furniture, for example. What are they searching for right now, etc. Where did they last make their purchase? Was it via mobile or was it online directly? So all these insights, once we've got that profile, really, really helps.
So then once we know the audience, I guess it comes back to that piece we were talking about with regards to the channels, doesn't it? And how you choose the appropriate channels um, for the audience that you've selected. And, I think that's where, to a degree, a bit more knowledge and skill does come into it in terms of knowing what platforms are best. But I would encourage people to think about doing market research. If you know who your target audience is, surely you know someone in that bracket or a handful of people in that bracket, and you could go and potentially speak to them and say, I'm looking at launching X or selling Y. You might already be launched, but you're selling a new product online, whatever it is. Um, you're my target audience. How would you like to be sold to? So it's following on from that piece you've just said there, Manny, about data you have access to through Global Web Index. But if you don't have that access, where could you start? And it comes back to just using your connections, using your network to do a little bit of market research to start understanding, okay, I'm going to invest my time and my budget into this channel. Because for us, we know, if a client comes to us and they're in the position where they can invest in using an agency, we can advise them on that. But if you don't yet have the budget to invest in the support of another company to tell you which channels you can use, I do recommend that doing a little bit of market research could help you narrow that down in the initial stages.
Actually, with target audience, I'm also putting in a same level, let's say defining the goals, because sometimes people could understand who is their target audience, where they want to share like their like just do marketing, but sometimes they really don't putting like specific and measurable goals in front of them. So for video, actually, we are creating, let's say, three main goals of marketing videos. It's its first one is for awareness when you need to attract new customers. Second is for consideration when you need to engage your audience. And the last one is for decision when your customers already when you're selling your product and your customers will buy it. So basically, for me, there are a lot of companies who are trying to sell their products to unknown people, although they first of all need to, let's say, attract them, engage them, and then finally um, just sell their product to this specific audience. So for me, putting the goals in front of you is also very important. And let me just give you a specific example of a case. So let's imagine that the company has a very complicated product, and when the clients enter to their website, they maybe can read all these text written in it, but didn't actually understand all in all the product, and that's may just lead them to leave the website without taking any actions. So in this case, our goal would be having an explainer video which could, let's say, help clients to understand the product and lead them to be interested in it and then just bought the product. So in this case, our goal were to just explaining, which we are getting actually done with explainer video. So this is just an example. And when we are talking about distribution, for the video distribution is actually not only understanding in which platforms you are putting your video, but actually also how many videos you need to achieve your goal. Finally, where to share your videos, how to share it. Like, do you want to post it native on the platform, or you want to embed it from YouTube, for example. In this case, we always suggest people to put videos native in the platforms, but let's say that your goal is to attract new customers on YouTube. That means that embedded video on Facebook or LinkedIn would be better, because in this case you can actually realize your goal by getting more subscribers on YouTube. Or in other way, you can create like short version of your video, put it on Facebook, and like put down just the link. If you want to check the more version, just go to YouTube. So this is just also a way of distribution that people need to actually consider before starting producing any videos.
Absolutely. And I think it's a good point of, obviously you're the video marketing specialist anyway, but people might be going, well, how do I know if video should be part of my strategy? But I think in 2021, there's not a digital marketing strategy out there that wouldn't include video. If we were recommending to other people, because if it's social media related, video. If it's website or YouTube, video. Any, even linking to paid ads, there's probably going to be an element of video in there. So video then becomes a really, really key part of any strategy, and actually it is something that any business can get started with at a very low budget. I know that's something we'd covered previously in another episode, so people can go listen to that as well. But in terms of, there's a scale with all these things, isn't there, in terms of my getting started budget versus my all singing, all dancing, super professional, I'm giving it everything I've got budget. And, for anyone who has identified who their audience are and what channels they should be using, then video should always be considered as a key part of that. It's just content, the same as writing a post is content, video is content, and we're all visual people, and that's how we like to consume it these days.
I was going to say, so do you find that clients always ask you to tell them what their budget should be? I get this quite often where clients say, well, tell me how much I should spend. I was like,
Yeah,
I just,
it's a really good question. So basically, it's yes, usually they ask us to tell about the budget and anything, but because they maybe haven't tried before any kind of video, that makes them really complicated to decide how much to invest on this. But I would really say, before you need to try one time, at least one time, create any video, see the results, and then start thinking about budgeting, because you will never like decide how much you need to invest on video marketing if you haven't tried before, because it's also very specific for each company, each market, each customer, and it's also changing all the time. So it's of course we from our side can suggest, can give any ideas of how much would be really good to invest in this case, but the client need to decide this for themselves, of course. And when we are talking about budgeting for the video, it's very important to understand because there are maybe different, let's say, types and formats of the videos which can lead to the same goal. I mean, you can maybe get the same goal with animation and with live action video, but when you understand the budget, you can decide which one is better to use. There is also some, let's say, an interesting fact that in ads for social media, usually companies and even production companies do not use 3D animation because it's actually time consuming and it's needs more budget. And sometimes people just asking why you are not using 3D animation for commercial. That's because actually it needs more time and more money to create, but the result can be the same as you can get with the 2D animation. So sometimes this budgeting helping you to understand also, are you actually need to create this kind of content, or you can get the same goal, achieving the same goal with less budget and with less time spending on this.
Yeah, I always find that clients get surprised by budgeting. I always say it has to come from the client in terms of budget. As a business, you should know how much budget you have set aside for marketing. Now, if you're approaching an agency like any of ours, then we can advise you by building a strategy and telling you, how you could split that budget up, but you have to have that number in mind. So as part of building your, your business strategy, and we talk about this at the start, is aligning your business strategy objectives in line with your marketing strategies. How are you going to achieve that and what's it going to cost? If your objective as a business is to increase revenue by X, then how much are you willing to spend to increase that revenue by X that year or over the next, 6 to 12 months? So it all comes down to, understanding your internal financials and, what that looks like. Part of the strategy in terms of as we go through that whole process is once you understood your audiences, once you understood right what type of content like video to build, it always comes down to then understanding right how to make best use of that budget. Because once we know who your audience are and start profiling them, whether you're an existing, you've been running for years and you have a good idea of who your audiences is, or we're helping you understand who your audience is, or you're a complete new client to the market, then that helps identify specific channels where you can start exploring within digital to maximize your budget with different elements. I feel like a lot of clients think they can do everything across digital, and it is quite cheap. And digital overall is a cheap platform to, however, if you're a national company and you've got a limited budget, you're not going to get national reach, if you have a small budget. Say, but if you're a local business and you have a good budget, then you can make good inroads just geographically in terms of what you want to achieve.
Yeah, just wanted to add that when we are talking about budget, it's not only about the production, let's say charges. You need to always consider about paid video ads too, and not only about videos for any content, because sometimes just organic content is not enough. So when you are creating your budget, think about the paid media too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those where if I could give advice to anyone, as much as they may not know, or anyone listening, you may not know how much something should cost, you ultimately know what pot of money you have to get started with. And for an agency to best advise you on where to allocate that budget, we need to know that number. Ultimately, I think as well, there's maybe a bit of a misconception around agencies making loads of money, but actually a lot of the spend goes towards the advertising spend, which is soaked up by Google, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or anywhere else that you choose to advertise. And that will always be the most expensive cost over, for example, agency fees is going to be that advertising spend. But for us to best advise, where you can spend your money and see the best return, it's always good to get that indicator. And if you are looking at seeking some external help with regards to your marketing strategy and implementation of a plan, it is always good to have even if it's starting out, I've got this amount of money now. However, in 3 months' time, once the activities run, if I see a return, then I'm prepared to invest more in, then that's absolutely fine. And that's something we always encourage in the conversations we have with people is, let's get started with something that you're going to see results from straight away. And once you see the results, let's discuss reinvesting the return you've made into other platforms. And I think that goes across the board, with or without working with an agency. When it comes to deciding on your plan, is going, where are you going to invest first? What is your initial objective versus your long-term objective as a business? So initially you may be looking for awareness, going back to what you were saying earlier, Anush. Actually right now we need awareness of our brand, so we need to get in front of as many people as possible, and the metrics we're going to use to measure that are going to be about impressions and reach. However, over the course of a year, our wider objective is a financial one, how much we want to turn over, and looking at how you can convert impressions into clicks, into conversions, into customers. And that's why things like that AIDA model helps, because that kind of aligns with that. So going from awareness of, we're making a lot of people know who you are, to interest. People are intrigued, they're clicking through, they're interacting, they're playing a video for longer, whatever it may be. They have a desire, so they're contacting you. Then at the end, action, they've placed an order, they've become a customer, for example. So it really is about initially us focusing on what are we doing to raise awareness and get some initial traction for you. And we do often find, it will be similar channels that may help in those early stages. So for example, paid search or paid social or video, because there are other elements certainly that we do as an agency, such as search engine optimization, that we say to people, if you've only got a small amount of budget and you've only got 2-3 months to spend it, SEO should be considered as a long-term strategy. So let's instead look at some short-term wins for you, that will see results. And so as much as you may want to think, I want to do everything, I want to do it all, let's really think about how doing it all fits into a 12-month strategy, but let's break it down into quarter by quarter and what we're doing in the first 3 months. So anyone listening to this and going, where do I start? How am I going to have to find my audience? What do I do next? Understanding what budget you have available to then know which platform you can invest in, but invest in one and get it right and get it working really well for you. And then you will see a return that will give you a larger budget for the rest of the year to invest more and grow your business.
Just to bring it back, then maybe a step, when we're talking about budget, what about like their online presence? Because what I always find with businesses is part of the strategy is it's not just, it's yes, it's understanding your audiences, it's putting a budget in place, it's identifying channels, but remember, you're going to be, as businesses, driving traffic to an online website, an online particular lead gen form or data capture element. So you need to make sure that these platforms that you're working with and your websites are well geared and optimized to convert. Having a website that isn't mobile optimized, for example, is not going to help. So part of your strategy, and the first thing that we do here at Bobble is, we also look at, the online presence, how do their social pages look, if they are relevant on social pages, if they have them set up. Sometimes we come across clients that say we want to do a LinkedIn advertising, but they don't even have a LinkedIn company page. So that's one element to kind of look at. It's, how active are they across, their Facebook, their Instagram, if they want to do social ads, and if that's the budget that's gone into it. There are many elements to kind of consider in terms of their online presence, but the key element being the website. The content on that web page where you'll be driving people to get more information about your product or service is going to be very, very key, and it directly links back to the platforms you use. For example, if you're doing pay-per-click advertising. You want to make sure that the keywords or the text within your text ad and the keyword is also resembled in some form on your landing page to improve your ad quality scores. If you're doing, if you're selling products, then your product landing page needs to be well optimized to be able to run, Google shopping campaigns, to be able to identify what that product is within the header. There are a lot of elements to consider, and that same when we're talking about content, whether it's video, because video could then be placed on that site. You could then have a teaser video that gives them some insight to an answer or a question they have, and then drive them to that particular landing page where the full video would be present. I feel like that same tone of voice needs to transpire in terms of messaging and content all the way through the process from ad to website. So I'd say just before that, the first part of the budget I always look at is, does anything need to be doing with the website, or do we need to spend time optimizing, updating the social pages if we're going to be pushing ads from there?
Yeah, and that's such a good point, because we often find that people will go, I've done the website myself to save money. I've just put that together, and then now I've got this budget to do it. And you go, okay, let's go a couple of steps backwards here and look at the website, and actually, is it fit for purpose? And yeah, rightly so, a lot of the time it's not, when looking at it in terms of it being a lead generation page on the back of an ad or whatever it may be. And that's something we will sometimes do with clients, is go, let's take your 3-month initial budget that you wanted to spend on advertising or something, and create a budget for redoing your website or changing your website to get it up to scratch, because that is a place a lot of people will cut corners. So go, I've done that, and now I'll work with you to start advertising. But actually, it all comes down to that main source of your online presence. Your website is your digital shop front, and you wouldn't just set up a shop without merchandising it and doing your window displays and doing whatever and expect people to come in and buy from you. So the same goes with your website and your online presence. So yeah, that is such a key area that a lot of people do cut corners with, but is worth the investment.
When it comes to video, it's not only when we are creating a video marketing strategy, it's not only about like the target audience, goal, and budgeting, because sometimes you can have all these ready, but didn't understand at the end which kind of like what type of video I should use for that. Because it's also so important to explore video industry to understand which formats they are, which types you need to use in which cases, to understand the style, you're connected with your brand, and of course, the most important, having a compelling story. Because if you don't have all these together, which is need to be based on the video marketing strategy, of course, but if you don't have these, like having just strategy by itself will not work. So basically, start exploring video types, start exploring the formats. For example, animated videos nowadays are a really good way to explain ideas, to just engage people, but it's not working for seniors. I mean, if your target audience is B2B clients plus 60 years old, don't use animations, even if they are so cute and really amazing and engaging. So this is just a way of understanding which type to use. And content we are putting, let's say, in video marketing strategy as one of the main and important things to consider when you are it creating. Of course, we need to think about also optimization of your video, because when it comes to YouTube, you just can't put your video online and just sit down and wait, okay, my video will work actually. But you need to also optimize it. By optimizing, I mean having a compelling title, headlines, thumbnail, which encourage right people to actually want to watch your video. And optimization, we actually dividing into two parts. It's audience optimization and algorithm optimization, which actually one, let's say, um, adding to another, because when you have your audience optimization ready, you know actually which kind of titles to put to engage the right audience. It is leading to have really good algorithm optimization, which is shortly said is a piece of video content that will be seen first or to whom. So basically, it's also so important to optimize video, and remember that it is changing during the time, and for different companies it's working in a different ways, so you need to work on this and find the one that works for you actually.
And I think, on what you were saying earlier, it comes down to that messaging piece around what your messaging should be. And something I say a lot to people is there's a difference between what you want to say about your business versus what people want to hear about it. And I think there's a really big disconnect there, in that, a business will be like, I want to talk about our mission statement and our values and our people and um all these things about themselves. But what is it important for your customer to know? How are you helping them with your product or service? What pain points are you answering for them? And we do a piece around content if we're ever writing website content for someone, or potentially doing social media content, where we work through the top reasons people will buy from you, the top reasons people won't, and then the top reasons people will come back, and the top reasons that they won't come back. Because when we look at that, that can really help us frame some really key messaging, because actually that piece around the top people reasons people won't buy from you is so important. Because if it's people that should be buying from you, but there's a common objection or misconception or whatever it may be, that actually we could answer through the website content or in a video or in a social post, so they know, oh, this is for me. I can see that this is for an audience of my kind. I can see the price, it's within a bracket that works for me, it's aimed at my needs, it's better than the competition, so even if it costs more, I can see the value in it costing more. So really helping to frame that for the customer into how you promote and message your business.
Just as you mentioned competition there, that is another element as part of the process that, anyone listening as a business should consider as part of, developing their effective strategy. Not to say you should copy what your competitors are doing, because what you do as a business will be different, but you need to look at who your closest competitors are. We like to look at do a competitor analysis as part of a strategy build for clients, and the reason for that is to give us an idea of who is has more market share in terms of search volumes, keyword rankings. We need to look at how well is their website optimized compared to it. What are they doing well? Are your competitors asleep at the wheel, or are they very, very active? Because it kind of gives an example of how competitive that market and how competitive you have to be to get your customers' attention, because your competitors will also be getting their attention at the same time. So that's where it comes and links back to the content, in terms of making you stand out from the rest within that. But understanding your competitors and who your key competitors are. What I always find with certain clients is they'll give example of competitors that they're not even close to. So they may be turning over between 1 million to 2 million, but the competitors looking at are turning over 50 million plus, and it's like, well, should you really be seeing them as a competitor? They're a market leader. So, you should be looking at, all those other businesses that turn over the same amount or a bit more and less than you, because that doesn't mean that business is below you or not trying to achieve and get to where you are. But there's a lot you can learn from tools like, Facebook ads library can let you see what kind of messages and ads they're displaying. Even going on their LinkedIn profile, there's actually an option where it says ads, where you can go in and see what kind of ads they're doing. There's a lot you can do and look at to see how competitive or how active your customers are. Just going on the social pages, see how regular they're posting, what kind of tone of voice they're using. If you're trying to target specific keywords, put it into keyword planner within Google, and then look at your competitors to see how well and effective they are at ranking for that.
Actually, earlier that Claire, you were talking about metrics. I want to add small thing that the data that each platform is providing us to measure our success is not the only way of measuring it, because sometimes, for example, you can have 1,000 views on your video, but do you really need to pay attention on this? Because, for example, let's take an example that you are creating a video to sell your product, and actually it's getting really good sale, but not like likes, comments, and views that you were expecting. So basically, if it's giving you that sales, it's better to that means that you achieved your goal, and no important like did you had like 1,000 views or 10,000 views. But of course, it's always good to have more views, likes, and comments. But in this case, getting sales from the product that you have created for that specific goal is better way to measure that you get success from what you have done than just concentrating on the analytics that the platforms provided us.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much. I'm wondering if this is a topic that we should have a part two for, because there's so much here, and this is just scratching the surface in terms of audience, budget, yeah, like measurement. But we could probably also do a deep dive more into the models people could use, more into the specific channels, like how to know when to select PPC versus video versus social. So it might be good, because I know we've almost at the end of the session, it might be good to kind of get people's comments if they listen to this, and know what they'd like to know next, to frame a second part of how to create a digital marketing strategy. But hopefully, I mean, there's loads of useful bits here that we've discussed today in terms of for someone to get started if they didn't know where to start.
Yeah, I think a lot of the insights we shared today has been obviously, really, really insightful. The only thing, and because I think there's a lot more we probably wanted to cover off, and I'm just conscious of time, is, we definitely should do a part two, because it's like once you develop that strategy, how do you follow up and adapt it? You don't just create one strategy and leave it alone. It's, coming back and the analysis around that, understanding, how the audience segments in terms of the profiling you did, how well is your tone of voice working, what kind of video content you've created, etc. How well is your budget working, how do you optimize that budget, how do you scale that up in terms of results. So it kind of takes it to the next stage of the strategy in terms of refining it and having that ever evolving strategy. But as I said at the start of the session, businesses right now should be focused on short-term strategy, because how the economic environment and the general environment around you is ever evolving. Consumers, behaviors have changed online significantly in the last 12 months. So you have to adapt to how that's changing and how consumers are behaving online.
Totally agree.
Absolutely. Well, let's ask people for their comments. If you see this posted on LinkedIn, feel free to come back to us. We've got the website, bobblepod.co.uk as well. So it would be good to hear what people think, and we can follow up. And we're going to do a session, aren't we, where we actually invite someone on and we will do a digital marketing strategy with them. So if anyone wants to take part in that, please reach out to any of us and we could get you lined up to come and be a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, because obviously, as you said, we'll be taking, a startup business and actually getting their viewpoint where they are and actually talking them through how to develop, and how to introduce digital marketing as part of their startup business. So really excited for that one next month. Just want to say, obviously, thank you to, Claire and Anush, and everyone who's listened in today. And we really hope you've been finding the podcast, useful and educational. Do drop comments on our YouTube page, do put questions to us at bobblepod.co.uk, and do reach out to us on LinkedIn if you have any specific questions individually. I'd like to thank you all and look forward to catching up with you on the next podcast.